set the camera back. Sit straight. Make yourselves quiet. Locate the ground with your senses, all of them. And stretch up away from that ground. Taking this shoulder girdle and rolling it softly over the top of the rib cage so these ribs can continuously lift up. They don't get stopped by any kind of tension or downward pressure. Keep that skin covering these shoulders soft. That keeps the nerve soft. Be sensitive through the inner surface of that skin. Join your palms. Draw your attention in. Organize and connect the breath to the posture. Start first with this diaphragm rib cage, the basic breathing apparatus. See that diaphragm spreads, not just around its perimeter, but also all across the dome of its surface. So if you go in with your senses, there is a mesh of nerves that comes down from the brain through the trunk and spreads over this dome of the diaphragm, right? So as you breathe, relax those nerves, let the diaphragm spread. If this happens, pressure releases from the chest region, the heart. Don't keep a ball of tension under the heart. Open and lift that region. You'll feel it when it's going correctly. Feels like space, not pressure. Breathability, no pressure. The back ribs, side ribs, front ribs have to move harmoniously. The spine, engage with. From that release, the doors then open for the other promise. Downward moving, upward moving, outward through the arms and legs, and inward toward the heart. In this way, pay homage to the practice and to that lineage of teachers, reaching back to the root teacher Patanjali. Bow to your heart and release your hands. Now, leaving the head down, can you reestablish this lift in the chest? Raise your head, open your eyes, stretch your legs, change the crossing. Take your arms, reaching to the floor, spine up. Now, Urdhva Hastasana. See that this whole circumference of the base of the rib cage, where theoretically the most flexible ribs are. This is cartilage in front. There's no sternum in front. There's just a flexible spine in back. That thoracic spine, where your ribs are attached, in theory, can take back bends, can take forward bends, and can take rotations. It's quite mobile, not as mobile as your neck. Use that mobility, stretch your arms, interlock your fingers so you can pull up more actively. If the elbows don't straighten, you take some kind of support so you can straighten your elbows. Roll the triceps toward each other, lift your ribs, widen the diaphragm, stretch your feet, stretch your arms, come out. Okay. Stand up. There will be some standing poses. For which you probably are going to want a wall nearby and a chair. And regular blocks as usual. Whatever, strikes you as the usual blocks for standing poses. Okay, so once you've assembled, put your stuff nearby and stand in Tadasana with the feet joined, toes to heels. Now, if you're like me, it takes a few moments to organize the line of the feet. That horseshoe of each heel should press into the floor quite evenly so that whole U shape. Many of us naturally fall to one surface or to others, sometimes the same on both feet, sometimes different. So take a look and stretch down. This intersection of the ankle, if you see it where my thumb is poking through between the leg bones and the heel, that ankle has to come in, not necessarily to touch the other foot, but don't roll it out. Keep this ankle section in. And pressing. Stretch your arms. Lift your chest. Keep the skin covering the shoulders soft. Don't harden that inner surface. Smooth the shoulder blade down. Smooth all of this back muscle, shoulder girdle muscle down. Okay, Urdhva Hastasana, this time going forward. Take Urdhva Hastasana. Stretch up. Now use that strap again. Those who need to, you're just holding it, and you hold it. You have two choices. I think this way is better. This way works better. Because you roll those triceps in. Everybody, oh, you can't see. Everybody should move either with your rope. Get your hands together behind your skull, or you do it without ropes. The only way, the result of working with ropes is you get this tremendous freedom at that diaphragm base of the rib cage. Do you feel it? That rib cage diaphragm can widen. Can you get your hands closer, Gay, using that strap behind your skull? And you feel what happens to the rib cage when you pull up. So if you don't need the strap and you can do, you might just interlock thumbs and not use the strap, but don't pull your thumbs down and curl your fingers. You gotta push up, right? And use that interlock like a strap. And don't forget to change the interlock of the thumbs, because whatever that strong thumb is, that's also the strong shoulder. Good, come out. Okay, you all right? Did you get this middle zone to relax some and breathe more fully? Suzette, did you wish to speak? Okay. So pose 2. Vrikshasana. Right leg first. Feel free to use support or be near it. So if you have a tendency to fall out of the pose, make it so you can spend more time in the pose. Let me also suggest that you keep yourself as close to a bare floor for balance poses as possible. So a hard mat or a hard floor. Okay, I fortunately have a wall, and I've got 2 walls. Vrikshasana, standing the way you just were, and remembering you're coming up like this. So if need be, catch a strap, hang it over your shoulder. So when those arms come up, they can come up sort of easily. Right foot up. Now pull that knee up high. Pull length into this standing groin. Keep full extension on the standing side, and bring the heel as close to the root of that left thigh as possible. As soon as this foot meets, push back. Remember the inner heel. Okay. As soon as this is pushing, this heel is pushing. This calf is pushing. This thigh is descending. I'm going to turn sideways for a second. so you can see some of the less visible things. The standing leg, which is this one, has to go back. Okay. And in front, this front hip has to go up. So do you see it? That thigh has to go back and that pelvis comes up. That's how this groin gets long. This buttock goes down. Change sides. Sorry about the strap. I'm mainly about legs today. Come up tall. Maximize the space in this inner hip, knee up as high as you can. Way up there. Look, I even go sideways to open that groin if possible. Then bring the heel in. Press back. Two sides meet, two sides press equally. This heel and the standing heel have to organize that inner heel, outer heel, horseshoe of the heel, balance. Back to the length. Thigh back, pelvis up. This buttock down, this thigh down. That helps the shin push to the heel. It's almost like you feel a back bend starting, right? Come out. But that's what Vrikshasana is. Now, take the whole pose back to side one. Balance as possible. Use a strap as needed. Make it so you don't have shifting to do. This is Vrikshasana. So you got to feel anchored and expansive. And you come up. I don't know if you can see me interlocking my thumbs to open that rib cage and diaphragm. And then it is easier to keep the lift coming up through the rest of the spine and also downward. I can breathe. Out you come. One thing at a time. Rejoin big toes, inner heels. Press the inner heel down. Stretch your arms. Side two. Go up. Open across this pelvis. Inner thigh. Inner thigh. Place the heel. Soon as the heel comes to the inner thigh, press back. These two surfaces meet with the same firmness that your standing foot meets the floor. Thigh back, trunk up. Measure these two sides of the trunk. Here, there's some shortness on the bent leg side. Can you fix that any amount? It gets much easier to fix when the arms come up. If you interlocked your thumbs, change the interlock. As soon as you can decompress that diaphragm, decompress this side of the rib cage, you can release that grip in the side. Do you feel it? That letting go at the diaphragm has an effect that goes all the way downward and upward. Release, come out one thing at a time. And be in Tadasana, and then take Uttanasana, which is just a resting forward bend. Now your feet should, if it's resting, let those feet be apart. Now, if your practice is good, even joining the feet should not interfere much with the breath, but typically we say feet apart lets the breath be much more at ease. Of course, let go of the diaphragm, which allows the breath to move toward the pelvis and freely through the chest, throat, head. Come up. Now, watch. Here's a chair seat, and it's braced at a wall. This arrangement may mean you can't quite be in camera range or at the perfect angle. I don't mind. So watch what's happening with the pose and then go where you need to go to get this support right. If your feet are slippy, put a sticky mat on the chair seat. Shouldn't be an issue. But if it is, or if you don't like the cold, here we are standing. And what we're going to do is a bent leg version of Parshva Konasana. So put your foot flat on that chair seat with a vertical shin and roughly horizontal thigh. Now this standing leg at first is vertical, but you might choose to back it up a little bit in time, not just yet. So let this buttock descend, groin open, inner heel down. You reach out, keep your trunk long, keep this groin as long as possible, open the outer hip, and slide down your ankle to your foot to the inside of the chair. Now, this may be the place where separating the feet allows you some more length. So push that bent leg heel down. Bear equal weight with the arm and that leg. Roll the trunk up in two directions. Headward, release the ribs, the diaphragm, and roll up, stretch up. Take your arm overhead. Now, reach into that pose. Make it feel like Parshva Konasana. See how I'm reaching that stretch to open the back hip. Walk your foot back, Gay. Standing foot back. Yes, keep the, yes, you feel the stretch from heel to arm changes. Go even further, Gay. Yes. Whatever the hip is that stops you, you stop, but otherwise go for Parshva Konasana. Now carefully come out, take your arm back first. Keep those feet even, come out. Stand on 2 feet. Are you okay? In some respects, that pose is easier you can stay longer. There's less weight on that front hip. But in other ways, if you allow it, it really opens flexibility in that groin. That is my view. Side 2. If you feel your chair is stable, freestanding, enjoy. Make sure your foot does not slip. So I'm saying, when you start in this way, this is not, look at the distance between those feet. I do not do Parshva Konasana like this. There is more space for this pose in between those two legs. So I'm saying, if you start back here, you might get slippy. Keep yourself balanced, go forward. Once you get the hand stable, start walking that heel back. So you begin opening space to lift these ribs, open across the abdomen, roll the ribs up, and take the arm vertically up to the ceiling, open across the chest, then it goes overhead, maybe to a wall, but look at the line from my top hand to my foot. I need that line to stretch straight. So I don't necessarily have to bend my knee more, but I got to straighten the line. Come out. Okay.
Devon, I've got a question on the standing leg, the outer hip. So when we bend the knee, the hip does not go in.
Which
You're still
standing leg?
lifting.
Which standing leg?
Well, we had one leg up on the chair, so the standing leg is the one that's
floor
straight.
leg.
The floor
Yeah,
leg.
but you, okay, the back leg.
The back leg, yeah.
Okay. And now the question is again, repeat.
So the hip does not sink in, does not go in. You have to resist a little bit to keep that outer line of your pelvis and thigh in one line. Is that what you were
Yes,
trying to
look,
say us?
a lot of this looks like Parigasana.
Yeah.
Which is right here, it's like Parigasana.
So we're getting a
So,
long stretch here.
Very good, yes.
Okay.
But if you want to move to Parshva Konasana,
You've got to move out.
do you understand this is closed?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I have to, I accept that, and this is going to change. But now everything can open. I don't keep curling like Parigasana. I open it up like Parshva Konasana.
Okay. So you're looking for one line here.
You bet.
Okay. Thank you.
Take it on the floor, everybody. That means feel free to use a brick. I just mean you're on a horizontal surface. Okay, so you've got a brick and you can keep it on the instep side or the outside, and it can even be tall. This is your choice. Now, the distance, you've already seen the goal of the distance is to super open that top side. It is called Parshva Uttita Parshva Konasana. So it is an intense stretch of the side at an angle. Turn that right leg, stretch your arms, open your chest, keep the skin at the shoulders soft, keep the diaphragm expansive. Exhaling, bend the knee. Right here is where you adjust your stance to that right ankle, straight back leg. Ground the heel. Now extend. It's not Parigasana, but this outer hip has to lengthen. This bent leg buttock has to lengthen away from the ribs. You come to your brick. Now thigh back, pelvis up, push on the floor, open those ribs, stretch your arm back, and then up. Each step of the way, evaluate that diaphragm. Is the door open to push to your heel? Is the door open to lift to your chest as the arm goes overhead? Can you stretch through the limbs as much as that inner body? Now you can come up the strong way, or you can come out through Trikonasana. Do coordinate your breath. So shift props as needed. And turn. Open the chest. Connect to your breathing. Stretch out, even with deep breath, through those arms and legs. And exhaling, you come into Parshva Konasana. So reach out, buttocks away from ribs, ribs away from buttocks. Take that hand down. Adjust the length of your stance as needed. Bend that knee more, Suzette. If you can, get the right ankle, even taking a higher brick. Now push hard, lift the ribs, extend through the limbs, all four. Open that chest. Take the arms up. Take the arm over. Connect into the expansive diaphragm. Now adjust your stance so you find that full line of extension from the right hand to the right heel. And up you come. The strong way that goes through Vira 2. It comes out the way you went in, or some other way, safely. Turn the feet, bring the feet together. Take Uttanasana. Uttanasana. Now, if the legs don't straighten comfortably in a full Uttanasana, then you should take a partial Uttanasana with the feet apart, maybe hip width. And we would just call it Ardha. So you can, which means half Uttanasana. Okay, come on. All right, let's see. Only one standing pose left. And it's the old perennial Trikonasana. And I'm just doing it so that you may have, after all this work, a way of comparing your experience of Trikonasana in other Trikonasanas to this one. So take your feet apart. Oops. Turn to your right and just take that pose. Now, inner heel, big toe, buttocks away, long stance as you may need to. Come on down to even a tall brick. Top hand on the hip for a bit. Sort the legs, sort the breathing. Lengthen your stance, perhaps. See if more space comes. Good. Come up. Change size. So I'm introducing you to the idea of Trikonasana as a tranquil pose instead of our usual let's get going pose. See if you can take it side two. See if you can take advantage of the openings in the ribs and hips. One of the restorative things about this kind of standing pose, Trikonasana and Ardha Chandrasana, is that if the hips are open, if the legs stretch, the organic body really gets to relax in a different relationship to gravity. It's like all your guts can drop this way if you let them. Right? Don't grip, ungrip. And breathe. And open that chest. Now, when this top arm stretches, its intent is to open more space for the organs. When you stretch the legs, it is to anchor the pose, ground the pose more thoroughly so that the trunk can be more free. Time to come up. Inhale. Turn the feet forward. And if you're not too close to a wall behind you, take Prasarita Padottanasana, use bricks if needed, under the hands. Stretch your trunk forward with the same attention to detail, particularly in the difficult place, which is the horseshoe of the heel. Now, exhale, hang the trunk down. If your head does not go to the floor with the legs vertical, put a brick or a blanket. I see, Suzette, that works well if the legs stay vertical and if your skull is resting on the wrists without you tipping, or the floor, that's fine too. It doesn't have to be the wrists. The idea is the brain is grounded. That is all. Throat soft. Now, you need to arrange your spine and trunk in such a way that all compartments breathe. So you don't want to be folded in such a way or straightened in such a way that there is hardness anywhere. The spine is probably curved. The navel region is lifted but spreads. Diaphragm spreads. The heart decompressed. Rib cage, collarbones wide. Throat long and soft. Those shoulder blades, including the skin covering them, softly gets away from the skull. And the skull drops away from the tailbone. Now, prepare to come up. Straighten your elbows. And if need be, move your feet together. If you can get that horseshoe of the heel connected into the hip socket, you can come up without adjustments. And then bring your feet together and be in Tadasana for a moment, just standing there. You don't have to have your feet joined. You can have those feet apart. Just be upright.
Devon,
Yes.
yesterday you told me when I did Trikonasana to put my big toe in line with my heel, the back big toe in line with the heel. I don't
Yes.
been told to put it in line with the arch. You mean that always, right? To put the big toe
Well, I'm saying that the classical pose, if you see this, is either lined up heel to heel or heel to arch.
in. Okay.
But there is such a thing as, we call them, angular or oblique poses. And they are to, and they can actually get pretty bizarrely like sticky mat width.
Okay.
But if you feel that both hips get very necessary strengthening, maybe it's Wednesday, but next week we might still approach standing poses and we might do the angular ones. Your back thigh has to really go back, and that front hip has to really come forward. So it makes much more activity and it helps take the legs wider apart. I would, so your answer, Gay, is on days when you're really going to go to work on the hips, sort of repetitively, you might say it's like hip day.
Okay.
Then go to work like that.
Okay. Gotcha.
And do it with several poses. It can be done with Trikonasana, but wait till I teach it, and then I'll give some pointers that'll keep you from bugging the knees. Adho Mukha Svanasana, everybody, please. Plain old vanilla Adho Mukha Svanasana. Heels up at first, knees straightening. So by opening the diaphragm and freeing that basic mechanism, you make possible an integrated extension through the spine, integrated extension through the rib cage, and out through the legs, out through the arms. Soft throat, soft neck, soft head, and the breath stays connected. And if anything, the pose helps you connect it more deeply instead of getting it cut off more deeply. Now, walk forward to Uttanasana. And then come up and prepare your place for some seated poses. So you might well need a bolster. You might well need even a chair if you are stiff in forward bends, and possibly a brick or two. There's lots of potentially useful tools. If you sit high because of stiffness, then you absolutely need 2 bricks, right? If you're raising the floor under your buttocks, you might need to raise it under your hands. Let's see. There's one other thing. I'm setting myself up for 2 views so you can see. Let me just say, if you turn the chair to face away from you, this is a support. And in fact, I prefer it to a wall behind you, unless you have a bar wall, which has things you can push down on, pushing down. Okay. So bricks, a chair, a wall, blankets, and a strap. Okay, so this is Urdhva Mukha Janu Shirshasana, upward facing head of the knee pose. So as needed, you protect your knee and bend your right knee out to the side. When these hips are tight, bring that heel in against the left thigh, like Vrikshasana. It's going to make it seem as if your knee is a little forward, right? Whereas we often say, if you watch this foot in Janu Shirshasana, move that foot out so it's all long and open. That only works if the hip is willing. So you take the pose that makes it possible for you to keep both hips grounded. And you work from there to widen that pose. Okay, so back to basics. This rib cage has to open. So give support with the hands, and you'll start feeling maybe a little helpful decompression of that middle body just by pushing the rib cage up. Now do an Urdhva Hastasana. Lift up those ribs, and you can feel the difference between the two sides and the breathability. Okay, take two hands up. This only works if the thighs are grounded. Open those ribs. Guess what? Use the strap. You who need the arms straightened. Go forward, stretch your arms, stretch your ribs. Catch your foot. Don't go down anymore. Catch your foot. Now pull, stretch your foot into your hands. Pull back with your arms, lift the ribs. Widen the ribs. Open up that rib cage, that spine. Lengthen, lengthen. The skin of the shoulders goes down. The ribs come up. Release, come out. So you should have felt the engagement here of hands to feet really enabling the lift of the trunk, right? There's this, you can see whatever activity is happening here. And you come forward and there's whatever there is, but now when I engage here, much more is possible. Did you see that? Okay. Side two. They're different engagement when the hands are down. So again, bending the knee, starting close to the groin. So it's comparatively easy for the hips to be even. And you only come out to the degree where you can maintain some evenness. It does change. Then taking the hands down, stretch your legs and the arms and lift the trunk. Regulate that breathing. And an arm comes up, just one, then both. Then you really do some stretching there. And use those legs, come forward, catch your foot, and pull up tall. So when you are stretching your arms up overhead, there is much more energy required in the trunk. When you're attached to your foot, hand to foot, and these two are interacting, the trunk can relax. Is that true? Yes. Okay. Come out. So then what happens is a twist. Let's keep it simple. Your right knee will bend. You will come up. You will at least stretch one arm to catch that foot and then join it with the other. Those who found this two-handed work useful, I say it's pretty strong. So if you need that final oomph of work in those back muscles, by all means. So you come up. This is where we left off. Okay. So release back from that, maybe with a strap to catch your foot, and take your other arm to the hip and turn toward the straight leg. Toward the straight leg. Now this hand behind might go to that chair seat. It might go all the way up to the chair back, top. If your trunk goes forward, that arm has an easy time going up. Turn those ribs, turn and turn, and come out. Stretch both legs. Turn it this way here. Bend your left knee. So you've got something behind you as a support for that hand, not a floor, a chair, something elevated that's not going to make your shoulder hurt. Some people have a hard time going high up on the chair back, but a lower support can be helpful, okay? So you sit in Janu Shirshasana, working from the simple to the more open hip. Stretch the arms, one or both. And you go forward, catch that straight leg foot, reestablish the legs. Catch with two hands, do a nice lift through the spine. Then you release the, it's going to be your right hand, left hand hangs on. Left knee is pressing, right leg is stretching. Then you go behind you to chair or some surface you can push on. To, the same way you're push-pulling on your foot, there's kind of a push-pull on that hand behind you to help turn the ribs. Now observe that diaphragm. It absolutely is being constricted, but see that you can still breathe around its circumference and still have some movement close to the center. It's constricted, sure enough, but don't stop breathing. Come on out. So you may, and stretch both legs. You may think of these twists as things that create constriction, like here's a perfectly good piece of cloth, but I twist it and it gets very compressed. You could think of that, but you can also think of twists as sort of, I don't know how to say this, but the opposite, as their means, they're a way of stretching the diaphragm so that afterward there is more room to move. Okay. Janu Shirshasana, complete pose. This is where the bolster or the chair might come in handy. Sit as high as you may need to. Bend your right knee. I suppose I'll bend my right knee. Now, in this more complete pose, if all is going well, feel free to bring that knee way out, to bring the heel toward its own groin. So you're in what we think of as the more classical Janu Shirshasana. Work according to your capacity. Don't force this knee up. It should keep a ground, okay? Raise the trunk, stretch both out to both feet, arm or arms up, and you come forward and you catch that foot. And you know, there's this intermediate phase that I took to an extreme and made you do a big twist. But this intermediate phase here, where you really stretch the bent leg side of the rib cage, is quite important. And exhaling, take that whole cylinder of the trunk forward as your head comes down. So this pose, if you're fully in it, can also be considered constricting in the diaphragm, but instead use it as an opportunity to spread laterally and open that center of the dome of the diaphragm. Spread the back, spread the waist. And come up. Sit there just for a minute. Don't straighten the legs, just be as you are. Then stretch your legs and change sides. Be as careful about this side as the other. Open that hip as far as it is willing. Sit up straight. Stretch your legs. Take one or both arms up and reach forward, catch that foot, at least with the bent leg hand. Now you do that, it's not quite a twist, well, it is a twist, but it's aimed at fully lengthening that bent leg side of the trunk, because it gets dragged back. Now, two hands, that means the straight leg side is now coming forward to meet the bent leg side. And exhaling, take that whole cylinder of the trunk forward to bolster a brick, a blanket, your shin. Now, one thing that gets crimpy here is, one thing that gets crimpy is the diaphragm. So keep seeing that the breath is released there. Sideways, the center, back, front. But also this region of shoulders, neck, that gets kind of crimpy. So you've got to soften that shoulder blade skin. Right? It's not just supporting the head in this pose, that lets you release the neck muscles, but you've got to let go that skin and its inner surface attached to those trapezius muscles. Sometimes pulling on your foot to widen your arms right from the spine out helps. Not just away from the skull, but away from the spine. Now, come up. sit up straight, just a few moments, not changing anything. And then help that bent leg straight and lie on your back. This is getting ready for Shavasana. So those who are continuing with any kind of practice after this, you should do Setubandha, not Shavasana. Otherwise, if this is the end of your practice, at least for the morning, then you lie on your back with the arms out to the side. So there's a lot of kind of freedom in this chest. Tuck your shoulder blades. Keep the knees bent. And just work on, you might say, deflating. And once you feel, after several breaths, right? So you're trying to go in, you might say, layer by layer, but you get through several breaths and your heels dragged out straight on the floor. Don't lift your leg off the floor. Let that weight be taken by the floor all the way out. And once you get the leg stretched, you can sort of walk your feet away from each other about sticky mat width. It's been a standing pose class. So sometimes the body, frequently, the nervous system and the body work hard. Now, it's not my view that I seriously made you sweat, but you may nevertheless have worked hard. That's the nature of standing poses. They make everything work. So use this opportunity, use your exhalation. let's be biochemical about this. When you use a lot of energy, that energy is carbon-based energy. All the food you eat and the body you inhabit is carbon-based. So when you consume a lot of your body's energy, it breaks down into the chemicals break down into their constituent parts in the burning of those molecules. And it releases a lot of carbon, which is why your exhalation contains so much carbon dioxide. That's your exhaust. It is, in fact, the primary way that humans burn fat. You do not lose weight through excrement. I mean, you do, but that's a comparatively small part. Much bigger is what the exhalation is permitting. So it's really quite true that the breathing, the fact of breathing, the act of breathing is by itself a cleaning process. You don't have to do special pranayamas to clean yourself. You just have to not interrupt, not constrict this natural process. So there's this environmental term, decarbonization, but it also applies to your body. A good breathing process decarbonizes you. Slowly prepare to come out. Don't leap mentally, physically. Don't sharply change your breathing pattern. Bend your elbows, knees, roll to the side, and come up sitting. Standing poses. Namaskar.